ANC has rapped Minister of Finance and NEC member Pule Mabe over the knuckles for his utterances on Twitter, expressing his frustrations over the role and independence of the Reserve Bank. Has called on Mabe to stop making statements that contradict resolutions made at the party's Nasrec elective conference. In his speech at the ANC's birthday celebrations, President Cyril Ramaphosa reaffirmed the party's position on the role of the central bank, saying that the government would undertake the process towards full public ownership according to a time frame that was prudent and affordable and that did not benefit private shareholder speculators. The minister tweeted yesterday that he was convinced that the resolution was wrong. To discuss this and other issues, I'm joined now in the studio by ANC National Spokesperson Pule Mabe. A very good evening to you, Mr. Mabe, and thank you very much for speaking to us. What brought about this decision to actually vocalize your disapproval of the interaction? Because we then saw this leading to a difference of opinion between ANC members.
Well, evening, Ostepis. Well, in the 54th National Conference of the ANC in 2017, the ANC adopted the communications protocols. These protocols would lay out a framework under which the African National Congress would be able to manage and operationalize its own communications. It also goes on to define the role of the national spokesperson, including defining what other spokespersons of the ANC, when so appointed, would be expected to do. The intention there was to make sure that you try and make sure the message that goes out from the ANC is always one message. You avoid sending mixed messages that would ultimately confuse the public, you know. And I mean, we've got a saying in the organization, many voices, one message, but that requires coordination. So last year, I think it was sometimes in July last year, we did issue a directive to structures, advising them on the need to adhere to the communications protocols and the possibility of action being taken against those that knowingly go out to undermine the protocols. We also took steps to make sure that we educate all of our structures. We even went and briefed caucus in Parliament, met with all spokespersons of the ANC across provinces to make sure that they are fully inclined and understand what these protocols entail. And this also captures a social media policy in terms of what is expected to be the conduct of our members.
Is this something that will lead to action? This is not the first time that not only the finance minister himself has expressed what would be said to be an adverse view on the ANC's resolution, especially when it comes to the South African Reserve Bank. It's not the first time that members of the ANC actually come almost to blows, not physical, but on Twitter, having a tour over this. Yes.
No, look, we have issued a statement calling for restraint, not just to Comrade Pule Mabe, but effectively to the rest of our members, because it makes the work of those of our comrades deployed in government difficult. If there is an issue, if you were serving in the NEC and there is an issue that you wanted to ventilate upon in terms of the rights of members, the constitution of the ANC does provide a platform for you to be able to express your views. And internally, of course, because conference is the highest decision-making body. Once conference makes a decision, only the next conference would be able to review the decisions of that conference. But in the intervening period, the National Executive Committee then takes the lead as the highest decision-making body in between conferences. It now means that all the powers that are conferred to conference are carried by the National Executive Committee up until you arrive at the next conference.
There's a reason I ask you whether or not this would lead to you taking action. Yes. And I'll take you back to a warning sounded by one of your former presidents about this tendency of personality cults. One of your members, the Ekurhuleni Mayor Mzwandile Masina, even accusing the finance minister of being arrogant, acting as a lone ranger, so to speak. And I'm asking whether or not the ANC is going to take decisive and swift action to bring to an end this tendency that we see of personality cults.
Well, of course, the fact that the ANC has already issued a directive to structures, it means that if this conduct persists and continues, the ANC will be left with no option but to take action, including taking comrades through disciplinary hearings, because the ANC cannot afford to have its own comrades liquidating it through their own actions. It can't happen. The people of South Africa, the society that we claim to be leading, must be seen as communicating one message. So we've called for restraint. We've issued a statement. We said, Comrade Tito has got a platform in the NEC, is a member of the National Executive Committee, and all of us as a collective are custodians of democratic centralism. It means that the conduct of us, those who lead the apex structure, is one that must be able to inspire all of our members. Members look at us and then say, this is the rightful, acceptable conduct in the organization.
The ANC often refers to collective responsibility in terms of leadership, and I'm wondering, what is your train of thought? When we look at Tito Mboweni as a finance minister, obviously he has his own ideologies, and the president at pains at the January 8th statement to emphasize the need for unity.
Correct.
But it is clear that there are disagreements also in policy direction. Is there a danger of any member, high-ranking member of the ANC, going down their own path simply because they do not agree ideologically on some of these issues?
Well, resolutions of the ANC are not resolutions of individuals. They are resolutions of conference. We are expected to execute those and reflect to conference where there are challenges. It doesn't matter whether I like the resolutions or not, they are taken by a conference. We have declared 2020 the year of unity, socio-economic renewal, and nation building. And we said that it is going to be important that we put it's all hands on deck. We try and make sure that we save this ailing economy. We generate the jobs that are required. We communicate one single message, one that will be able to unite our people. So we can't, coming out of January 8, be tolerant of instances that undermine that which we said must be seen to be done. Because if we do that, you can imagine, if this is done by a region or a province or even a branch that speaks out of 10, what then happens? But also in the ANC, there are no rules for Pule Mabe which don't apply to other members.
And I'm glad you raised that issue, because there's the issue again of collective responsibility when it comes to Eskom. The president also pointing to that changes have to be made. The Veterans League coming up with a statement saying, title Eskom and the assault on the president an endgame, but it also points to what it calls a political assault on Pravin Gordhan, saying that it's insincere and is creating a crisis. What is your point of view of that? That there's a perception that there are those within the party who are fighting a political war and using Eskom as a proxy? Well,
I can tell you now that at least in the National Executive Committee that we sit in, we have never really sat and had a discussion about the role of ministers and whether they are fit or unfit. We have expressed full confidence in the National Executive that has been appointed by President Ramaphosa. Actually, in the last special NEC held in Kimberley, we have agreed that the next NEC, which is sitting this Friday, part of the critical agenda items that it must deal with is the role of SOEs. Because the 54th National Conference did resolve on what is expected to be done by the SOEs. We said they must drive development. They must also drive socio-economic transformation. There must be anchors of creating jobs and stabilizing our own economy as well. So what does that mean? It means that SOEs must be self-sustaining themselves. I mean, these are effectively business units of government. There is in no way, I mean, this National Executive Committee of the ANC is fully behind President Ramaphosa and his efforts in government to stabilize
Allow
Eskom.
me to ask you two quick questions. Firstly, then, do you see Professor Malagapuri Makgoba as the right person to drive that transformative agenda with his appointment as interim board chair at Eskom?
Well, I don't think that the issue should be whether Professor would be able to do the work or not, because we must point it to the collective board members who are there to support Prof and make sure that the immediate turnaround, short-term turnaround strategies that are put in place are implemented. It doesn't matter who is there. The most important thing, the critical thing, is the plan. Okay. And that all of us must support efforts that are being made to stabilize Eskom. You see, because the moment we spend a lot of time discussing whether personalities that are going there are fit or not, by the time we exhaust that discussion, we have already lost some more time.
Okay, but you do need bold leadership to deal with some of the issues at SOEs. And Telkom, 20% of jobs are in danger here. So just from a governing party's perspective, what is your plan, or you're hoping will be the outcome of?
Well, it is a bit of a concern. We are quite encouraged by what Telkom themselves have said, that whatever decision or solution that they come up to would be one that would be mutually beneficial to all the parties. And we are hoping that in everything else that they do, they will also make sure that they put the interest of the workers first. Remember that in everything else that our revolution is all about, is to also make sure that we protect jobs. You know, I mean, the three fundamental questions that we seek to resolve well within our own strategy and tactics is class, race, and gender. And you can only be able to resolve class issues through employment, amongst others, making sure that those that are in employment could be able to sit in those positions at a sustainable and equitable level. You know, so this really constitutes the things that the ANC is all about. And I'm sure that there's a different conversation would have to also be picked up with our alliance partners to make sure that we could come up with mechanisms that allow us to communicate one single message that gives the people of South Africa hope. I think the biggest thing that our people need now is not this Twitter wars, it's not us speaking in tongues, it's us conveying one message that gives them hope. I think that's what the people want now.
What do you think will give hope to South Africans with regards to the unemployment situation? And I know that the midterm budget speech has pretty much spelled out what will be delivered in the State of the Nation address in terms of the trajectory going forward, and the January 8th statement as a broadsheet of what the plans are. But there's some new thinking that is required. There's some innovation.
Well, correct. You are right. I mean, I like the last term you used, innovation, because we need to be more innovative, forward-looking. Look at the things that could be done in the immediate. The January 8 has now spelled out some of the priorities which we believe could be done. So it means that when we go into the ANC Lekgotla, we'll have to now start speaking into detail about those, so that when the Cabinet Lekgotla sits to reflect on what now becomes a program, in detail they then say, in government, what are we going to be doing? Focus on jobs. And then say, this is the targeted number of jobs through this economic reform plan that is out there, which we believe could be implemented. So you need all of us to be at one. You need all of us to advocate for the creation of jobs. So the message that we must be conveying on your television screens, out on Twitter and everywhere else, is that on a weekly, monthly basis, we must be giving an account of how many opportunities we have distributed out to the public.
In a word,
we must
Mr.
tell
Mabe,
positive stories as well of the people that are becoming beneficiaries of those measures that we're putting in place.
In a word, yes or no, would the word radical be dominant?
It must be, because radical goes with new thinking.
All right. Thank you very much for
Correct.
speaking to us.
We need to do more things. We need to radicalize our own economy so that it generates the jobs that are required. We need to all work together. I mean, the word radical is not a word that must belong to a section of the ANC. It's a word that belongs to the entirety of the African National Congress. The ANC at the 54th National Conference advocated for radical economic transformation. And the president of the African National Congress is on record talking about a radicalized economy in our own January 8 statement. It means all of us are committed to radicalizing the economy so that we can create jobs. These bundles of joy that we saw going to school today, they must be able to wake up in the next few years and say, we have been able to construct the South Africa of their dreams.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. Pule Mabe is the ANC's national spokesperson.